right. It's not just about being healthy financially, although that is part of it. We share tips every week to improve your mental, social, spiritual, financial, intellectual, and your physical health. Today, we're focusing on your physical health and the topic of diets. What how can you improve your physical health with diets? We're going to find out. If you have never seen Millionaires Are Made, this is the show built on the fundamental beliefs that every person you meet knows something you don't, and there's something to be learned from everyone in this big, beautiful world. In the spirit of authenticity, to try to remove as much bias or persuasion, we do not talk about tips or advice backstage. Our guests are about to tell you from their own life journeys what they believe. We got some awesome experts on the show now. It's going to be a great one. Hopefully, you guys learn a little something and can grow in your physical health. Audience, if you're currently watching this, this is a very interactive show. Please feel free to comment and ask questions. We will ask them live to our guests and put them on the hot seat. We also want to take this time to do a little shout out for some of our followers. On Facebook, Elizabeth Davidson, you're awesome. Instagram, Juliet. TikTok, Edenea Oliviera. And YouTube, Whitney Cushing. Thank you guys for following. We love it. And if you want to be shouted out on the show, all you got to do is follow. We are also always looking for new topic ideas. If there's something in your life holding you back with your financial health, maybe something spiritually, maybe even physical health, let us know. We will go out and find 3 awesome guests to come give you a little bit of advice and help push you through. If you want to be a guest on our show, link is being dropped right now. Please sign up. We love having guests, and we know you got something you can share with the whole wide world. So sign up and come be on our show. If you're watching this and you like what we do, please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, heart, laughing emoji, whatever it is that helps us continue the show. It definitely makes us feel good when we see a lot of likes. If you also want to improve your health even more, I do offer one-on-one growth sessions. One-on-one, we'll talk, we'll see what we can do. Worst case scenarios, I can refer you to people way, way, way smarter than me. So if you're interested in some growth of some sort, let us know. Huge announcement. We finally have, after millions of people, or maybe like 3 people, told us to get merchandise for Millionaires Are Made. So we will be dropping that link right now. Officially, we have shirts for sale. Can't wait to get mine and wear it around and wear it on the show. So go grab yours, support us, and wear an awesome shirt to help the world grow. That's about it. This episode has some awesome sponsors too. Our first one is actually a guest on this episode. Samir Dasani is a certified health and nutrition coach specializing in the crazy prevention and reversal of chronic and autoimmune diseases. He does some crazy, cool stuff that's pretty basic that gets you back to your roots and can help you alleviate tons of different ailments. He's been on our show before, and almost every time we learn something new that he's helped people overcome. You should definitely check him out. Years of declining health, he discovered the healing power of traditional eating practices, which I feel like this country is going back to, so he's going to be even more important in your life. It transformed his life and his family's well-being. Now he helps all his clients reverse autoimmune conditions naturally without medications. He's down in South Africa pursuing his PhD in anthropology while saving lives across the world. Pretty awesome. Go check him out. His link's dropped right now. Our next sponsor for the day is Jesse Lewis, who brings unforgettable entertainment to your event. He flies around the world, and he's a comedy hypnotist, super insightful as well. He's not just hilarious, but also does interactive shows guaranteed to amaze and engage your guests. Go check out his link. Our next sponsor is Anthony McCauley, who is an endurance and wellness coach. He empowers runners, cyclists, and triathletes to optimize training, build resilience, and achieve peak performance. He has a passion for longevity and mental toughness, and he helps athletes push limits. And finally, we have, one of our favorite guests on the show as well, Anupama, who is a happiness coach, wellness healer, and speaker, lives out in the eastern part of the world and helps people find deep soul connection through mind and body. She's featured globally, and she's the author of the Zero Effort Journal. So you can join her for a free happiness session. Who does not want a happiness session? Every Monday at 5:30 p.m. IST, and that link is being dropped right now, so you can go check it out and see exactly what she is up to. without further ado, that's all I've got for our pre-show ramble, and now it's time to bring out our first guest, which just so happens to be Samir. Samir, who are you?
Hey Austin, how's it going, man? I think most of your viewers know who I am by now, but I'm a health and wellness coach. I'm an anthropologist.
There's
Moved here to
always new viewers,
there's always
always.
new viewers. I moved out here to South Africa. I'm getting close to 10 years now. We're loving it here. It's a beautiful country. I'm also, a trained jazz musician, and I like to write books. Lots of things we've talked about on previous podcasts. So yeah, that's
A
me.
man that does literally everything, every topic. Samir's like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could
No,
do
man,
that.
nothing. Yeah, no, your mathematics, economics, modeling, and so on. Although I can debate economists, but I can't actually do the modeling side of economics. But maybe that's
Just
something you can
playing with
teach me.
numbers.
There you go. There you go. So you can teach me that someday.
We'll have an episode on advanced
Done.
mathematical economic models. Here you go,
See how
guys.
that goes.
It'll
Yeah.
be me, you, and zero viewers. All
You
right,
never know.
Samir, let's focus on the episode today, and let's ask you a very important question. If I wanted to improve my physical health with diets, what piece of advice would you give me?
Yeah, this is a tough one for a couple of reasons. Because the word diet, if you think about it sort of from my perspective as an anthropologist and someone who talks about the human animal, we are the only animal that needs to be told what to eat, right? We're the only animal that sort of thinks about diets in this context, right? So for me, when I think about diets, I think about a species specific diet, right? Now, the problem is all kinds of things that were introduced in the past 100, 200, 300 years, even 10,000 years, and we have to ask what was the purpose of those things being introduced. So I'm doing a lot of research right now on the introduction of carbs to the human diet, and I'm going to write a paper on this. I'm going to present it in a conference in a couple of weeks in India. But just to give the punchline away, carbs serve the purpose of helping people who would otherwise be nutrient deficient survive. Okay, that's why they were invented. They were used in slave societies to keep the slaves fit enough to be working, but not fit enough to actually, have a rebellion. So I'm simplifying it a little bit, but that's basically my hypothesis, and that's basically what all the evidence points to. So in that context, okay, humans eat a wide variety of foods, but we can begin to again begin to sort of aspire to eat a human appropriate diet, right? And there are different levels of human appropriate diets, right? So the first level would be, guys, just take away the stuff that your grandparents wouldn't have, like, it wouldn't have existed during the time of your grandparents, like anything with a label on it. Maybe don't eat that. Number one, right? That's sort of the easiest thing, right? Get rid of all
Anything
the
with a
hyper
label.
processed, pretty much. Get rid of all the hyper processed junk. Number one. Number two is there are many plants that just didn't exist a few thousand or even a few hundred years ago. I would say the majority of plants you're buying in the market. Not to say that you shouldn't eat those things, but they need to be like, you need to eat less of that, because a lot of those plants contain anti-nutrients. The plants have to defend themselves from predation, and so they have anti-nutrients. They have things like lectins, phytates, and so on. I don't need to get into the biochemistry here, and I'm
Jesus.
not saying that those things are dangerous in all case uses. Like, I'm not saying they couldn't be part of your diet for some small percentage, but if they become the majority of your diet, you're going to face problems, just like I faced a lot of problems when I was a vegan and I was a vegetarian, right? So we get rid of those foods or we lower them. And what does that leave us with? That leaves us with basically meat. And if you wanted to introduce some lower toxicity carbohydrates or lower toxicity plant foods, that could be okay. And for me, there's no one answer to what that is. It's going to vary from person to person. But things like sweet potatoes are probably okay for most people most of the time. Sweet potatoes do have oxalates. Things like blueberries are probably okay for most people most of the time. Again, those also have oxalates. With the oxalate containing foods, if you include something like dairy, the calcium will bind to the oxalates and make them a lot safer, as well. So that's a way of saying I don't believe in diets, but I believe in the principle of trying to find the human appropriate diet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, real quick, did you just say that if you have like blueberries or sweet potatoes, you should have them with some dairy?
Yeah, if you have it with dairy, so a lot of people will have blueberries with like yogurt or something, the
Okay,
calcium will
perfect.
bind to the oxalic acid and you'll just excrete it. So that makes life a lot easier.
So not only does it taste better, but maybe your body's telling you, hey, those foods go together.
Again, this is all like, post. So humans have been around for 350,000 years ago, for 350,000 years at least. And when we talk about dairy or we talk about plant foods, that's only 10,000 years. So we can't say that the human body is what's doing this. I think what we can say is that our ancestors developed survival strategies. So here in South Africa, we have a dish called cream spinach. The spinach is super high oxalate foods,
Similar to
but
like paneer.
no. So they're putting like heavy cream, like it's a European dish. Like they're putting heavy
Okay.
cream and cheese on it. Yeah. Um,
Okay.
so, but palak paneer would be another place, right? So you have a traditional Indian dish, cheese and spinach. And again, the people in India knew that if you're going to have a big spinach dish, you better have it with dairy, because the dairy is what's going to bind to the oxalates, and you're going to excrete it out, and it's not going to be dangerous. Make sense?
Yeah. All right. Okay. I like it. Yeah. So you're releasing that paper coming up soon.
I will do. Yeah, people can check out my blog and subscribe to my email list if they want the updates
Cool.
when it
And
comes
his
out.
link was already dropped. Let's see if we can drop one more real quick before we move on to our next guest. There you go. Yes, there's his link. Go ahead and check him out, SamirDasani.net. We'll bring him back out later as well. If you have more questions or want to read that paper, definitely send it to me. I'd be very interested in that. Thank you so much, Samir. We are going to move on to Shanoa. Hey, who are you?
Hi, who am I? I'm Shanoa, and I'm thrilled to be here. I actually wear a couple of different hats in my professional life. I am a fitness and nutrition coach. I've got over 20 years of experience helping clients achieve their health and wellness goals. I also specialize in group fitness instruction, yoga teaching, guiding individuals not just to strengthen their bodies, but also find balance and tranquility in their lives. Additionally, I bring a unique perspective to the table as a financial advisor, helping my clients achieve overall well-being, both physically and financially. So being financially fit and physically fit are my passions and what drives me.
So you basically tell everyone to stop eating out and cook your own food.
I mean, that could be financially beneficial and physically beneficial, right? Kill two birds with one
She's
stone.
like, my advice is
Save money, eat
my
better.
advice is very simple, but I need $2,500. Hey, you should cook your own food and do push-ups while it's cooking. I'm just kidding. Shanoa, question for you. If I wanted to improve my physical health with diets, what simple piece of advice would you give me?
Well, first, I want to start by saying that I agree with Samir. I just don't like that word diet. I think it has such a negative connotation. So I like to focus on nutrition when I'm working with my clients. And so I focus on the importance of nutrition in your overall physical health. It's not just about what you eat, but the quality and balance of your diet. I advocate for eating whole foods, foods that are as fresh and unprocessed as possible. You know, for some people that can be difficult or more challenging, especially, you know, in our society, but avoiding, like Samir said, again, those ultra processed food, I think is very beneficial to our overall health. So we want to prioritize your fruits, vegetables, whole grains, proteins, healthy fats, and steer clear of the processed foods as much as possible. I just feel when I'm working with my clients, you know, a balanced diet helps ensure that they're getting a variety of nutrients into their body, so they can function optimally and have the best overall physical health as possible. You've got to remember, food is not just fuel, it's really the foundation of your physical health.
Yeah, okay. It's foundation, yeah, everything. I read something. Shoot, let me get this right. It just happened this morning, maybe last night. Yeah, so you have to think about what you put in your body. Obviously. Oh, you would never put sludge into a Ferrari.
Right. Well, one thing I always say is garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, that's not the very technical or scientific term, but it breaks it down pretty simply. You're gonna get, if you're garbage, you're not gonna get you're not gonna be in the best health. You're not gonna have the best physical performance or sports performance. So it's really important to pay attention to the things that we're putting in. into our body if we want to thrive, as and function as well as possible.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Shanoa, tell us where on your life journey you learned this information. And maybe throw in a little bit of your financial help.
I think I've been learning this on my entire life journey through trial and error, right? Learning what works for my body, what doesn't work for my body, the foods that make me feel good, the foods that don't make me feel good. I don't think there's been one clear defining moment where there was this all came to me. It's been trying different things. Also, I think along my journey, lot of those bad diets taught me the wrong way, the wrong things to do for my body, and helped me get on the right path to finding proper nutrition and balance. So it's been a life's work of figuring out what works and what doesn't. I think that's true for many people, right? I mean, sometimes you got to figure out what doesn't work before you can find out what does work for you.
Unless they're watching this show right now and now they stole your best tip ever. Awesome. Thank you so much, Noah. We're going to move on to our next guest, and we'll bring you back out in the round robin. Next up, we have
All right.
Carlos. What's up, Carlos?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Carlos, tell me, who
Good.
are you?
I am Carlos Reyes. I'm a health coach / personal trainer, and I just recently celebrated my 35th anniversary in the health and fitness industry. I work predominantly with 50 plus active individuals who want to incorporate exercise and a healthy lifestyle into their very busy lives in the most efficient and effective way. What I'm most proud of are the long-standing relationships that I've developed with many of my clients, some for decades, to help them continue to perform at a high level into their 60s, their 70s, their 80s. My oldest current client is 93 years old, and her number one goal is to stay out of a wheelchair. We've been successful at doing that.
90, you said 91 or 92?
93.
93 and not in a wheelchair. That's rather impressive.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
her.
Love working with her.
All right, Carlos, I have an important question for you. If I wanted to improve my physical health with diets, what tiny piece of advice would you give me?
Here's the one thing that I have found that's been successful, almost foolproof in any aspect of fitness and health, is to keep track. Like they say in business, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And so I encourage everyone to keep track. Write down everything that you eat that has calories, both everything that you eat and you drink that has calories, how much and when. If you know those numbers, then it makes it much easier and simpler to put together a diet that adheres to your lifestyle, your food choices, the things that you like, the things that you don't like. And if you don't have that information or don't know that information, it makes creating a diet that fits into your lifestyle and your fitness goals much, much, much harder.
All right, keep track. I like it. Smart. What do you keep track of? Just your weight or what you eat or macros, calories?
Everything. Write it down in as much detail as you can. What you're eating, where that food is coming from, macros, micros, vitamins and minerals, what times you're eating, right? Because oftentimes what happens is people go for long periods of time. I live here in New York City. High stress, people are always on the go. They usually eat during their lunch period, let's say, for instance, right? So if you have 15 minutes to eat your lunch, right? It takes about 20 minutes for the enzymes in your stomach to get to your brain to let you know that you're satisfied, right? So if you know that and you only have a limited amount of time, what are you going to choose to eat that's going to fuel your body, right? So you can continue to perform if you're at work, let's say, for instance, continue to perform your job at a high level.
You have a shout out. Do you know Silver Fox Fitness?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, he just asked about you. Carlos, quickly tell us where on your life journey you learned this tip.
Well, again, 35 years ago, I started in this business as a trainer. And the one thing that we used to have to do when we were working with our clients is track everything down, right? What exercises they were doing, sets and repetitions.
Yeah,
and
okay.
so that practice you can use that practice for almost every aspect of your life, whether it's your finances or whether it's your health, whether it's your diet, whether it's your relationships. How many touch points do you have with friends and family who you love and you want to stay in contact with, right? If you keep track of all that stuff, it just makes it easier to assess that information, analyze that information, and then use that information to improve your health, well-being, your diet, exercise, your relationships, whatever the case may be.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlos. We're going to bring everyone else out right now and start our round robin section. And I already have a question for all of you. Let's grab everyone out here. What's up, Samir and Shanoa? All right, first question to start this off with. Do you guys recommend any fitness or food applications for your phone?
Yeah, I mean, I can start because my answer is really simple. Not really. I think, I'm getting ideas based on what Carlos said. There are food trackers that I've used over the years, off and on. But I'm a little bit more about intuition these days. Like, I think once we all, and I include myself at the top of this list, we have what I would describe as a dysfunctional relationship with food, right? I was a carb addict. I still am a carb addict in many ways, right? I have the tendency towards addiction. Make sense? So in that context, using apps and using these things really helps. But once I can regulate my emotions, once I can regulate my physiology, I just trust myself. Like, I'll tell you an example from today. Usually I don't really eat until 1 or 2 p.m. It's just, we've discussed fasting on previous shows, Austin. That's just my rhythm, yeah? But today something was weird. I wasn't feeling quite right. I got hungry at like 10 in the morning. So I made my lamb chops and my egg smoothie. And I had it at 11 instead of 2 o'clock when I usually have it, right? And that's fine. I mean,
Did you say it was a lamb chop and egg smoothie?
that's my breakfast. I'm on a lamb kick these days. I'm eating lamb chops pretty much every day.
Wait, but you blend up the lamb chops with
No,
eggs?
no. Sorry, I fried the lamb chops. Fried the lamb chops to medium rare or maybe rare. The egg smoothie recipe is 6 raw eggs in a blender with maybe 100 grams of cream, maybe a little bit less, 75 grams of cream, water and ice because it's hot here. It's summertime here in South Africa. So I make it, and then you start it at maybe a third full. That cream and eggs will blend up, and you'll get some volume to that, and it'll really fill you up. If you're the kind of person like me who has a tendency towards overeating, that egg smoothie thing for me, it's a lifesaver. It really fills me up.
But then you cook the eggs after?
No cooking, dudes. I don't cook the eggs. No.
You eat the raw
I'm eating
eggs.
the raw eggs. Yes, indeed. Rocky.
All
You
right.
saw Rocky, 1977 movie, yeah? Very famous one. Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, he didn't blend them.
Yeah.
He didn't even blend them. He just swallowed them all, man. But if you want to, so for the past year, I've changed my exercise routines, and I'd love to talk with Carlos about this maybe, or even Shanoa about this offline. I wanted to build out some muscle, and the raw eggs was one way that I was able to do that, together with changing my workout routine, obviously. But I put on like maybe 7-8 kilos of muscle in the last, so that's about 15 pounds of muscle in the last year with this new routine.
That's impressive.
So I think I'm doing all right.
So just eggs and cream in a blender.
No, sorry, there's also a bit of, so I do put a bit of sweetener. I use glycine powder, which is something that bodybuilders take. It's just a protein. It's an amino acid. It's slightly sweet to the taste. So that's what I use as my sugar substitute these days.
All right, let's hold off real quick there. Carlos, Shanoa, let's talk about this egg blender.
No, you don't have to, man. That was
I'm here for it. I'm totally down for it. I used to do the same thing. I don't do it so much anymore. But yeah, if you have a little bit of protein powder that adds a sweetness to the eggs, all day long I'll drink the egg smoothies. It tastes like a milkshake or eggnog. Like it's you have to try it.
You
Put
have
some
me an
ice in
eggnog.
it.
You have me an eggnog.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, Carlos, you're on board with this? This raw egg pound in your face, just chug it down.
If it works for Samir, it works works for me. I mean, that's the thing is you have to find what works for you, right? There isn't one particular diet that works for everybody. And so you have to find what works for you. And so if it works for Samir, I'm good. I'm good. It's not something that I would do, but when you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, an egg is a pure protein. It doesn't get much better than that. You can't get a protein much purer than that. Now, he's a brave man, but he eats them raw, even with a little cream and the lysine, which I'm sure makes them taste better. But again, if it works for him, it works for me. And I think I've been doing this for such a long time that you want to individualize, whether it's an exercise program or a diet, because the idea is you want the person who you're working with to do it for the long term in a sustainable way, right? Oftentimes, many of these fad diets that people try to engage on or engage in or, try to stick to, they fail because they don't align with their lives. They don't align with the things that they like to eat. So one of the things that I do with my clients is in the whole keep track of what you eat is I make them make a list. What are the foods you love to eat? What are the foods that you hate to eat? And what are the foods that you can't live without? Right? Okay. And so if you deny yourself the foods that you really love to eat, right, then you're sacrificing pleasure, satiety, right? The things that I love to eat. So what you do in that situation is you decide, okay, these are the things that you can't live without. How do we control the amounts, right? How do we control when you eat? Oftentimes, for many of us, we eat for a myriad of reasons. We eat when we're happy, we eat when we're sad, we eat to celebrate, we eat when we have nothing better to do, when we're bored, sitting in front of a TV, right? So, you want to sort of look at it globally. If raw eggs works for you, go for it.
Yeah, can I put a little disclaimer on the raw egg thing before we move on from that? Because I need people to hear the disclaimer.
Please.
The disclaimer is, so the first disclaimer is eat any raw food at your own risk. Yeah, don't come after me if you hurt yourself with it. Number one. The second disclaimer is that the raw egg whites in particular, contain an anti-nutrient called avastin. Now, if you have it together with the egg yolk, again, it kind of binds and you'll pass it out and it's no big deal. But some people will have a reaction to the egg whites, especially raw egg whites. So I don't recommend, if I have a client who because my clients are always asking me what I eat, and I try not to answer for as long as I can, but then I have to answer sooner or later. So when they find out I'm eating these things, then I'm like, look, if you want to introduce this, just do it with the yolks to begin with, please, because the yolks is much safer than taking it with the egg white in the beginning. And when you do it with the yolks, slowly you can introduce a bit of egg white. Maybe you could do 5 egg yolks and 1 whole egg, and then you can slowly increase your tolerance. Because if you start with egg whites, most people will have a pretty bad tummy reaction. So please don't start with whole eggs. Maybe just egg yolks is a better. I don't recommend anything unless you're my client and we're having personal, and I know your medical history. But if you're curious and you want to try this, I would suggest to try just with the egg yolks.
All right, we got some good questions coming up real quick. I'm going to throw this. Let's have Shanoa answer this one. Christine's asking, suggest a burger diet, please. You got any tips on that?
I would go back to Carlos's point of you can have, a burger on any diet. I mean, I wouldn't suggest eating only burgers, right? It's about adding variety. If you're only eating burgers, you're not going to get all of the nutrition that you need and, all the nutrients that you need. But, I don't think that a good diet cuts out everything that we love, or we won't stick to it. So if you want to, we have burger night here at my house on Friday nights. We've got burger night, no harm, no foul, right? Like my family loves burgers. I don't really prefer burgers, so it's not something that I incorporate into my diet. So it has to be very individualized. So I'd say to Christine, if you like burgers, then do not cut them out of your diet. It's everything in moderation. Nutrition is about balance and finding what works for your body. So add the burger into your diet. Don't cut out all the things you love, or the diet will be worthless because you won't stick to it.
I feel like burgers can definitely be healthy too. I mean, the biggest drawbacks is like a fast food burger, right? They have these sauces that are full of random stuff and these buns. that are just packed with empty calories. So if you make your own burger at home and you're using, good beef or lamb or whatever you want to use, I mean, a burger can be pretty healthy. A home cooked burger is definitely like a solid choice. Disagree with me if I'm wrong.
No, absolutely. That when you are in control of what you're making and putting in your body, it's definitely more healthy than not knowing what you're getting at a fast food joint or a restaurant. So if you're using locally sourced ingredients, you know what you're getting, where it's coming from, and definitely making your own burger is a better option than going through the drive-through. But sometimes you want a McDonald's burger too, and that's okay. It's still about moderation. I'd say when you can, make your own food. But sometimes for convenience sake, people have real lives. They go through the drive-through. I don't advocate for that, but you gotta find that balance and moderation in your life and what works for you.
Can I jump in here?
Yes, and then we have go ahead.
So Shinoa just used a word that triggers me, which is moderation, right? So I think there are two kinds of people, and we have to know who we are. There are people who are moderators, and there are people who are abstainers. This is how I like to think about it. And yes, there are some people who can do whatever it may be, the 1 potato chip or the 5 potato chips or whatever it is. But for me, as a carb addict, if you give me a potato chip, I'm going to have several hundred of them, right? So in that context, if we're dealing with someone who has a heroin addiction, we don't say, hey, you can shoot up a little. It's all right. No big deal. We say, no, your job as a recovering addict is to abstain. Make sense? So I think first of all, I think dietitians, mainstream dietetics has it all wrong, because all they do is moderation, whether they're talking to a 15-year-old anorexic or a 90-year-old diabetic, all they do is moderation. And it's clear that actually moderation is not a good strategy for either of those people, in my opinion. But secondly, it's like the decisions we make are going to influence our mood, and that's going to influence the future decisions we make. So, if I put it in the context of alcohol, I have a client who he was drinking a lot of beer, and for a while we tried to say, look, can you cut down? Because I didn't want to tell him to give it up altogether, right? Can you do this? Can you do that? And at the end, after a few weeks of trying this, he said, look, Samir, it's much easier for me to say no to beer 1. So to go from 0 to 1, it's much easier for me to say that no, although it's not easy. But when I go from beer 1 to beer 2, saying that is much more difficult. Going from beer 2 to beer 3 is absolutely impossible. So in that context, I think we need a word for we need to say, yeah, moderation may work for a very small percentage of people, in my opinion, but abstention is a much better strategy. And again, getting back to what I was first talking about, there are foods that are just inappropriate for humans. And there are options. Like I go to McDonald's. I don't go to McDonald's all the time, but I have had to go to McDonald's once or twice in the past year, whatever it is. I get 5 hamburgers without any buns, without any condiments, without anything, right? All stacked together, right? Because that's the food that I eat. That's what suits me, right? And
Moderation. Right?
That is my version of moderation. And in fact, when I want to lose weight, I go on a hamburger-only diet, by the way. I'll only eat the hamburger patties if ever I want to lose weight. And that's all I'll eat for months at a time. So anyway, some food for thought there.
I think
Hamburger.
I mean, I can understand how moderation can trigger you, but you have to know the client, right? So this is very, painting with a broad brush. And if we're working with a client that has an eating disorder or, something like our health issue, obviously the advice is going to be very specialized, but, just in general, I think that also telling people to abstain can be very triggering to go in the other direction as well. And I've experienced that with clients. When you tell you can't have burgers, you can't have ice cream, you can't have chips, can often one, make people feel shameful and guilty, lead to binge eating, and I've seen all types of things. So it really has to be based on the individual client, the advice that you're giving. But in general, I don't like to tell anybody that they have to give up something, unless if we're talking about addiction or eating disorder or something like that. That's a different level than somebody that's trying to improve their overall health and fitness. In small steps, instead of just wiping out everything. You give them measurable goals to get where they ultimately want to be.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. We've got some lined up here. What are the dangers of diet culture and obsessive eating habits?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, diet culture can be, I guess the devil's in the details, right? I mean, the word diet can be triggering for some people. Um, Eating plans, nutrition programs, and I think anything in an obsessive way, whether it's exercise or whether it's drugs or whether it's diet, can be detrimental to your overall health and well-being if it becomes an obsession, right? Um, I think just to touch on what so far, I think balance is a good word, right? Moderation works for some, but it doesn't work for others. Abstinence works for some, but it doesn't work for others. And I guess the bottom line, you have to know who you're working with. You have to know things that you like and don't like, and then figure out how you can put all of those pieces of the puzzle together to create a plan that's going to be sustainable and it's going to work for you in order for you to reach the goals.
Well said. Well said.
I think diet culture can really create unrealistic goals and standards for people and lead to, obsessive and destructive eating habits instead of healthy and balanced eating habits. So I think that our culture has been very instrumental in creating these unrealistic standards that people can't stick to. When they can't live up to that, it creates these obsessive, unhealthy eating habits oftentimes.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We got one last question, then we're going to move to our daily challenge. So we've got a question on what role does dopamine play in food obsession? Ooh, that's
So dopamine is considered one of the hormones that are, along with serotonin, it's involved in the pleasure response. But the interesting thing about dopamine is that it's not really about the reward; it's about the desire to move, right? So we can genetically modify mice to not produce dopamine. Those mice just sit there, they have no motivation to do anything. So dopamine is super important. Now, what we found when it comes to food, especially sugar, we found that if you give someone who may be overweight sugar and look at their brain, do an MRI of their brain, it looks exactly like giving a cocaine addict cocaine, right? It looks exactly the same. So in that context, what I teach, and again, what someone wants to do is up to them. But we have to be clear about what is human appropriate food and what isn't. If you want to shoot coke, if you want to shoot heroin, if you want to drink alcohol, I'm not here to stop you. Those are individual choices, right? But we should know that if you're having a donut, for example, donut is my favorite example of a food, or Krispy Kreme, my favorite example of a quote unquote food to make fun of, because it is about the most unhealthy thing in the world. And I think most everyone will agree with that, right? So if you want to eat donuts, it's up to you, but you should understand that even if the donut is high fiber, baked and not fried, whatever it may be, it is not in the category of ancestrally appropriate human foods. It is not in the category of, if you wouldn't give it to your dog. And if you did give it to your dog would get sick. You take your dog to the vet and the vet would ask what you've been feeding this animal. You know what I'm saying? So again, like the vet is asking any sick dog, what the hell you've been feeding the dog? We should ask ourselves what the hell we've been feeding ourselves if ever we have any symptoms. And we can get rid of those foods and we can move towards foods that are actually going to be healthy and nourish us. And yes, there are diet cultures that sort of overlap with these messages. But I think it's just a very simple principle, right? We feed the animal the foods, especially an animal that isn't thriving, the foods that the animal was designed to consume. There's nothing, what's the word? There's nothing controversial in that statement. Make sense?
makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that dopamine you get from a food like sugar keeps you addicted to those unhealthy sugary foods, just like an addict stays addicted to drugs. So I think, that is how the dopamine plays into food obsession. It keeps you, it's designed, sugar was designed to keep us addicted. So to Samir's point about he's a carb addict, I'm a sugar addict. So I do try to abstain from sugar because once I've had some, I want more. It's hard for me to find moderation with sugar because of that dopamine hit that I get when I have something sweet like chocolate. So
I think
All right, guys, we are way over time, so we're going to try to wrap this up. It's my favorite part of the whole show. We have to come up with a daily challenge. It's a task or series of tasks that must take less than 5 minutes per day, cost $0, and be available from Bonaire to South Africa that helps us improve our physical health with diets. What ideas do you guys have?
I'm going to go back to my original tip, which was to keep track, right? If you know what you're eating, you know when you're eating, you know how much you're eating, and where are those calories coming from, it just makes it so much easier to start making better food choices and healthier choices in terms of your diet. If you know what you're eating, because then you can say, okay, I'm eating too much of this, I'm going to take that away and replace it with something else. I'm going to drink more water instead of, you know, glasses of extra glasses of wine or beer, for instance. And so my tip wouldn't cost you anything less than 5 minutes. Just write down everything that you do, that you eat, that in calories for the next 28 days. And then you have the information to make better moving forward.
my tip would be to pay attention to how you feel and how your body responds to the foods that you're eating. And tracking the food can be a good way to do that, but really listening and watching how your body responds when you eat different types of foods, and keeping track of that. Not only keeping track of your calories and your intake, but like the response that you have to different foods and beverages.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, this is basically a food and mood tracker. We use it all the time. At least in my practice, we use it all the time. So what I would suggest, just to make it easier for your listeners, take a photo of everything before it goes in your mouth. And at the end of the day, so that takes literally 10 seconds just before you eat, not even. And then at the end of the day, spend 5 minutes, look at your photos, log what that was, and then write a little bit about how you felt after every meal or how you feel at the end of the day. Either way is fine.
I like that. Yeah, that kind of sums it up, makes it easy. So take a photo of each meal, and then Carlos, how are we going to track the calories if you don't know that?
I don't think we need to, man. I think the photo is enough.
Well,
But a lot of the fitness apps they will analyze the photo. Some of the fitness apps are so advanced now that you can take a picture of the food and it will analyze and spit back the calories, macros, nutrients, everything, if you want to do that. But I agree. I'm trying to get more away from tracking the calories and things and being more intuitive.
Yeah, so
my only response to that though is if I mean, we're talking from experience, right? We're fitness professionals, we're health professionals, we're health coaches. We have a lot more information that we use to our advantage to break that stuff down. But if you're a newbie, if you don't know anything, I think trying to be intuitive can be hard if you don't have the information, right? So you start knowing, knowing what you're putting in your mouth, being more mindful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then assessing and breaking down that information. And it could be done, just Google it. I mean, there's so many apps and so many websites that you can go. And then that's where the intuition comes in. That's where the mindfulness comes in. That's where you start saying to yourself, I don't want to eat this because I know it's not as good for me as something else that I've discovered.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. Like there's just such a disconnect. We know what we know, but there's such a disconnect. People don't realize how many calories they're eating or how much fat they're eating or how much sugar, and unless they really see it. So I think it can be helpful.
But I'm going to push back on that, just because what should we be measuring? Like, I don't agree with the idea of measuring calories. I think it's a complete waste of time, for example. So if you said measure carbs and measure like glucose spikes, if someone was measuring blood sugar, like pricking their fingers, I'd be all about it. But I don't think that's practical either. And that's certainly not $0. So I think it's just useful to know. For example, I have a client who, sorry, go ahead.
I'm not suggesting you measure anything. I'm suggesting you track it so you know exactly what it is, right?
So my proposal, which is just to take a photo and then log it at the end of the day.
Yeah, great. It's like the Dr. Shapiro's picture perfect, where you take a picture of what you're eating, but then you have to, even if you take a picture of it, you still have to know where those calories are coming from, how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrates, to make a better informed decision as to how you're going to change your diet.
I mean, I'll give you an example, Carlos. So I have a client who's not as old as your oldest client, but she's 73. And we took away her morning toast with her eggs. And, I had her doing a food diary, and she was like, okay, she used to have one egg. Now I have her on 3 eggs plus some cheese and no toast. And she's telling me already that, she feels a lot better. So in other words, we didn't track anything. I just looked at a picture and I said, look, can we do that same meal without the toast? And she feels better, right? So I think you can pick up on patterns without knowing everything that you and I and Shinoa have in our heads, right? You can pick up on patterns and you can make experiments, you can make changes just with the photo.
Yeah, but you're talking about taking something away, right? I had a client who lost 15 pounds because he was drinking 2 Snapples a day. 2 Snapples a day is 4 servings, right?
That's a lot.
Each Snapple is 16 ounces. He
Yeah.
lost 15 pounds. He did not know that. So we didn't take a picture of it because this was years ago, but we looked at the label. We said, you're drinking 4 Snapples a day. You really need to drink all of this Snapple. I was looking at the label because on the label of the Snapple, it says, made from real fruit juice. And he was like, yeah, I'm drinking something healthy. We took it away. He lost 15 pounds. Right? Another good example is you and I were talking about Whole Foods earlier. We're being bombarded by so much information that you walk into Whole Foods, right? The sign says Whole Foods. You would think that those foods would be up front and center. But when I walk into my Whole Foods, all I see are pastries, cakes, breads, right? I have to go downstairs to get the Whole Foods.
Even the salad bar is super dangerous at Whole Foods, man.
It's about gathering as much information as you can so you know exactly what it is that you're eating so you can make better food.
All right, guys. So I love that we have some many different schools of thoughts. We're going to just finalize this daily challenge here. We're going to take a photo of all the food you eat. I think that's a great idea. And then if you want to, audience, download a food app. I mean, there's FoodVisor, there's MyFitnessPal, I think Samsung S Health, Google Health. All these ones, you're more than welcome to do that. For our purposes, we're going to take photos, and then at the end of the day, we're going to scroll through our photos while thinking about our mood and our feelings.
And journal for a second, and journal for a couple minutes or something.
Yeah, and kind of, in the afternoon it sucked. And when you scroll by, maybe that's when you had your bag of chips. You're like, oh, all right. So if we can at least start correlating some of that, then maybe that'll bring some more of the intuition that all 3 of you have been talking about. And so I think that just taking photos and going through and thinking about your mood and doing a little journaling and kind of try to associate shit food and shit mood. Oh, I like that. That's a good shirt. Shitty food means a shitty. Speaking of which, Millionaires Are Made has merchandise. Links being dropped. Cool. So I think that's a good daily challenge. Take photos, think about your mood, and start associating food and mood as a good little step for us to do this. Y'all sound good with that?
Sounds great.
I like it.
And then if you want to go above and beyond, you can start tracking your calories, your macros, and start, follow all 3 of them. Go message them and ask about it and see which one fits with you the most. Yada, yada, yada. We are so far behind because I knew that would happen because of our guests and this topic. It's a very, very interesting topic. And I guess, bottom line is there's multiple ways to do everything. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to wrap up this episode. Shinoa, Samir, and Carlos, make sure you go follow them on Facebook. If you have any questions, DM them. Oh, God. One of our audience members wants to watch you eat your 6 eggs, Samir. All right. But in the end, physical health and diets. We just watched 3 super smart people talk about it, and none of them really had the same idea. They all have a little bit different schools of thoughts. So the bottom line is going to be your body and your health. Really, eventually, hopefully, you can be the expert of it. If you want tips and health, all 3 of our guests here today are great people. And if you message them, they will respond. If you go follow them, they'll leave you tips. And you'll have to figure out for yourself which one fits you the best, what school of thought you're in. If you want to be vegan, great, be vegan. Samir's not going to be your guy. If you're interested in whipping up some eggs and pouring them down your throat, maybe Samir's your guy. But they all have great info, and your body's going to be different for each one. So we do have a daily challenge. Take a picture of all the food you eat throughout the day. Then at the end of the day, scroll through the food and write down how your mood was throughout the day. Hopefully, we can see some correlation with shit food and a shit mood. And I hope today is the best day of your life. Until tomorrow.